gon' dance. We gon' get down. We gon' get down.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Chop Night Africa Live.
We gon' boogie, boogie woogie.
Chop Night Africa Live about to begin.
Outside, this song right here, it's dynamite.
Chop Night Africa Live. Motivation, inspiration, information sharing. Knowledge is power.
I'm coming back. I'm coming. Coming to get down.
This is Chop Night Africa Live.
We're gonna get down. We're gonna get down. We're gonna dance. We're gonna dance.
You are Chop Night Africa Live host. Divine Chamukong.
I'm coming.
Chop Night Africa Live from Washington DC, metropolitan area.
We're gonna dance. I'm ready. I'm coming. I'm dancing. I'm dancing. We're gonna dance. We're gonna dance.
Chop Night Africa.
We're gonna party.
From Washington DC, metropolitan area.
We're gonna boogie. Boogie woogie. We're gonna dance.
And because we intend to make this interactive, let us know from where you are watching the show.
I'm ready. I'm coming.
Chop Night Africa Live.
I'm ready to get down.
Dr. Eunice.
I'm ready. I'm coming.
This is Chop Night Africa.
I'm dancing.
We are every Sunday evening, 8 o'clock, Washington, D.C., metropolitan time, which is Monday morning, 2 a.m. in West and Central Africa. This is Chop Night Africa Live. I'm coming back.
I'm coming. We're coming to get down. I'm coming. I'm coming to dance.
On the show this week,
we're gonna dance.
Should our cultural diversity be a source of conflicts?
We're gonna get down. We're gonna get down. We party. We party hard. We boogie. We boogie woogie.
This is Chop Night Africa Live to begin.
It's outside. This song right here. It's dynamite. I'm ready.
And share this video if you like what you're watching. Share this video. Invite your friends. I'm coming back. I'm right back now, live from Washington DC, metropolitan area. This is Chop Night Africa.
I'm coming to get down. To get down. We're gonna dance. We're gonna dance.
In a moment, we will be connecting with Dr. Eunice Wamesio in the great state of Delaware, United States of America.
We're gonna dance. We're gonna dance. We're gonna dance. We're gonna dance. Oh, when we party hard. And we
Thank you everyone for watching this show. I see people are watching this show right from London, all over the place. Thank you so much. We have an interesting topic to discuss this evening. And my guest is already signaling that she's on the line on from the great state of Delaware. Let me ask you a few questions. Have you seen women in some parts of Africa, especially Southern Africa, Northern Cameroon, dancing with their breast all exposed? And I'm not talking about dancing in a bedroom. I'm talking about dancing at official events. Their boobs, their breasts all outside. Do you know that the same thing done in the United States would be an abomination? An abomination to the extent that women cannot even breastfeed in public. It's so controversial. So a woman in the United States has to cover her breast even when breastfeeding a baby, or if in a public place, she has to go to a corner. Gaia Bridget Gamon in London, I don't know what the case is there, but here it's just abnormal for a woman's breast to be exposed, whether intentional or not. But here in the United States, it is just so normal for people to sleep in bed with their dogs. People even kiss their dogs. Now in Africa, that's crazy. And we can go on and on and on. I remember my daughter when she was in Africa, when I called her, I said, Hello, Diane. How are you? Did you drink some water today? She would clap her hands in exclamation and said, "Ha, Daddy America wonder." Now she is doing the same thing I'm doing, or talking the same way. Now, if you come to the United States, which is a vast country, almost as vast as a continent, people in New York don't talk the same as people in Maryland, or people in Maryland don't talk the same as people in Iowa or Idaho or Kentucky. The reason why we bring this as a subject on Chat Night Africa is cultural diversity, lifestyle, the way we talk, the way we dress. This attire you see, I look like a prince or a king somewhere in Africa. It's an attire predominantly in the northwest region of Cameroon, especially the Balis, from where I was born, or from where I come. So the question becomes, just because I talk with an accent, and everybody has an accent, should that be a cause for conflict, social conflict? The reason why they say, he speaks with an accent. We hear that in the United States a lot. And Dr. Eunice Gwamisia will be sharing her experiences with you. So if you speak a language with an accent, is that a problem? There are people who eat frogs. I hear if you go to a restaurant in France, if you're not careful, you are going to eat frogs in a restaurant. Talk about the Chinese. If you go to China, you're not careful, you will eat cats, C-A-T, in restaurants. So does that make them any less human than we are, we who don't eat it? The reason why we're saying all this is because people put on their eyeglasses and see people through it and begin to make value judgments. Value judgments can be extremely dangerous. Now, I'd like you to share this video. As I said, if you go to Southern Africa, women are dancing with their breast all outside. In the United States, and Bridget Gael is telling me in London the same thing. They'll think you're crazy. Something's wrong with you. But is something wrong with you? Absolutely not. So why do we judge others using metrics being our values, using our values as metrics? Why do we do that? So I'm about to hook up with a lady who will have a lot to say. She will take some tough questions from me. And the reasons why I come very feisty sometimes is so as to excavate the treasure trove of information that are my guest. And tonight's guest is Dr. Eunice Gwamisia. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm about to bring in Dr. Eunice Gwamisia, connecting from the great state of 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Hello, Eunice. Dr.
Hello,
G.
Divine. Good evening.
By the way, I like your attire.
Oh, thank you. I do
You
have
don't look like me.
I,
You
I was
don't look like
running
me
late.
tonight.
I don't look like you tonight because I was running late and I didn't want to keep you waiting. So I apologize.
Beautiful. Beautiful. That's okay. Now, why should people, are you aware, by the way, that cultural diversity is sometimes the reason why we misinterpret people, we misjudge people, and sometimes all these misrepresentations, misinterpretations, mischaracterizations end up in conflict? Are you aware of that?
Absolutely. So I do have to thank you for having me on your platform and discussing a topic that is very dear and near to my heart. Yes, there is diversity. We live in a society right now that is so diverse, you cannot run away from it, whether you like it or not. To answer your question, diversity does exist in every area of the world, wherever you work, in your churches, in your communities, in your relationships, where have you. But the one thing we do have to begin with is your cultural identity. As much as there is diversity, do you know who you are to begin with? Because if you don't know who you are, then you run into conflict due to misunderstanding of others in your workplaces, in your churches, in your families, and everywhere we go. So we do have to begin this conversation by talking about cultural identity. And basically what that is what group do you belong to? Do you know yourself? It is that self-conception and self-perception of who you are. And I strongly believe that your self-identity goes back to your roots and your foundation. Hence, the values and the beliefs that we often misunderstand and end up with conflict. So yes, there is diversity.
Why should that be important to know who you are as a way of preempting or circumventing conflicts as a result of diversity?
Great question. You have to know who you are. Why? Number one, when you know who you are, you know where you've come from, and you can identify with your roots. You develop self-esteem, because in order to impact others and influence how others behave, you have to be confident with yourself. And also, when you know yourself, you can develop a sense of well-being, and therefore, in teaching others how to recognize your values and hence avoid some of those assumptions and misunderstandings that can create the conflict.
I come from Bali, Cameroon, and when I wear this, I am very proud. I look like a prince. Perhaps I look like a prince this evening. Now, why do people, because from what you say, the assumption is that, or the understanding, if not insinuation, is that there are people who don't know who they are, and or they're just not self-confident of themselves. Why so?
Well, that's a great question. You know, people often want to identify with who they're with. Having that said, you know, this idea of while in Rome, do what the Romans do, we turn to copy from those that are in our environment, those that are in our groups, those that we associate with. But often it's not always the best thing to do, because you have to bring to the table who you are. Because when you bring your own values and beliefs to the table, and the other people bring their own values, then you start to recognize that there is cultural awareness. And when you are aware of why I do things the way I do it, or the other person does things the way they do it, then you avoid the stereotypes and the ethnocentrism, because now you know, you see the value of why somebody is doing things the way they do it. I'm going to give an example. You and I both come from Cameroon in West Africa. Cameroon happens to have approximately 250 ethnic groups. Talk about diversity within just one country. Those 250 ethnic groups means what? That we have at least 250 ethnic languages. Does everybody speak the 250 languages? Absolutely not. We speak French and English. We consider ourselves a bilingual country, and that's another debate. However, just by virtue of the fact that we have approximately 250 ethnic groups, that in itself is diversity, and that in itself can create a lot of problems in terms of cultural conflict, because you have 250 ethnic groups that now have to relate and interact with each other. So with that said, when we're here in the United States of America, United States is now considered a salad bowl and not necessarily a melting pot as it was described back in the day. So right now you have people from all walks of life, different colors, different shapes, different ethnic groups and races, and different groups that just by association and common value, they come together. So with all of that, if we do not start to recognize the importance of the differences and celebrating the differences, we will not get along. So the beginning is just by being culturally aware of who is in your surrounding and who you're dealing with. We're not asking you to become culturally competent, knowing everything about someone else's culture. We're merely saying you have to recognize the little things about someone else's culture that will impact how you relate with them. Because when you bring all the ideas, the values and beliefs to the table, now we start to create very meaningful, trusting, and lasting relationships. And we can live in harmony. But until we begin to do that and avoid, oh, my way is the only best way, then we will not live in harmony.
Dr. Gwen Messiah Eunice, you're connecting remotely from Delaware. And please, if you like what you're watching, if you like the content of this broadcast, please share it, invite your friends to watch. Dr. G, as I fondly want to call you, I wore this attire on purpose, not only to project a cultural identity, but to project the richness of diversity. If you see the thread in the embroidery, it looks beautiful, because of the embroidery, because of, the network of threading here.
Yes.
Why is it that unlike a bouquet of flowers, because you like a bouquet of flowers because it has different flowers there, why is it that human beings cannot replicate that unity in diversity that you have here, and that is a bouquet of flowers? Why so? With all the five senses that you and me have.
It is very simple. We still live in a society where others think that because you look different, you sound different, that you're less important than others who look different than you. Until we start to embrace those differences and see the value in the differences. I'll take you back to my story. Because if I don't share my story, then you might not be able to relate to it. Let me just give you a simple example. I have been a student myself, and I'm also an educator. Being in the classroom as an educator has taught me a lot of lessons, and I've heard things that I would never want to hear someone say to my child in a school. For example, some teachers only value teaching what they're supposed to teach within the time frame that they have to teach, whereas others spend time knowing which type of students are in their classroom. For example, a student that has an accent, I've been there. I have an accent, which I think it's beautiful. I came from another country, and I'm a woman, and I'm a Black woman more so. But I'm in the classroom with predominantly Caucasian teachers who maybe think that my accent is not going to enable me to do well in school. But they fail to realize that if they meet me halfway and say, hey, what is beneficial to you in terms of my teaching strategies? If I speak different, I may sound different, but that doesn't mean that I'm less intelligent. The teacher just needs to come halfway with me and recognize that I do have cultural values that may impact how I learn. Research has proven it. 48% of students in public schools come from diverse backgrounds, compared to 84% of teachers who are not from that same background. So they need to become comfortable with dealing with students who are from a diverse background. Research has proven it. Students from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds do have poor educational outcomes. So what are the teachers doing to come halfway to the table to meet these students and recognize that they have to change things around? They have to think more of these students. They have to help them set goals. Until we start to speak in those terms and think of globalization as another example. You cannot do business in the world today if you're not diverse. Your company will not do well. So we have to start recognizing the importance of diversity and the power of it. Cultural awareness alone, getting us around the table, the conversation, get us talking. I have walked the walk. I'm not just talking it, because I was once told that because of my race, because I was a woman and I was an immigrant, those were determinants to a job opportunity. But I have proven that misconception wrong, because today, if I had listened to them, I will not be where I am. So we really do have to start recognizing that.
This is Chat Night Africa Live, and when we come here, we come with motivational speakers that Dr. G is. We come with people who can uplift you. We come with people with great minds, positive minds, to lift you up, because social media has a lot of doom and gloom. If you know somebody who is making a difference, who is touching people's lives in different ways, in magnificent ways, in fabulous ways, let us know. These are the kinds of people we want to talk to on Chat Night Africa. It does not matter where you are in the world. Dr. G, let me ask you something. When people, you hinted on the problem of self-identity, self-confidence. Are we some of the reasons why people don't want what we have? Hello, Dr. G. Dr. G is having a technical problem out there. Dr. G, if you are watching, it looks like you have some connectivity problems, because it looks like your image is frozen. Dr. G resumes. Yes, Dr. G, please resend a request to join. While you do that, This show is sponsored by Bold and Elegance. If you want one or two occasions, people are looking at my feet. I went to a church service and people almost forgot that they had a pastor in the church. You can see Bold and Elegance, these beautiful, cute shoes. Bold and Elegance is on Facebook. Go to Bold and Elegance on Facebook. They have a page. Yes, Dr. G, yes, I know that you lost me. Resend the request to join and I will take you live. We are talking about cultural diversity, wondering whether it should be a source of conflict. This is Chat Night Africa. Yes, Natalia Anya, I know Dr. G is your favorite. And please share this video. We will still have a lot of things to talk about. Dr. Eunice Gwan-Messia, please resend the request to join and I will take you. It seems you have resent it, so I'm going to take you right back on now. I have some important questions for you on Chat Night Africa Live. We come on every Sunday evening, 8 p.m. Washington, D.C. time. Yes, Dr. G, I lost you for a minute. But
yes, sorry about that.
That's why the signature tune is I'm coming back. I'm coming back. Now, the question I was asking you, Dr. G, is you hinted on self-identity, lack of self-confidence. Are we some of the reasons why people don't want what we have? Because of the way we communicate what we have.
Absolutely. You just hit on it. Communication is key in everything. Whether we're talking about diversity, whether we're talking about relationships, what have you in life. When you don't communicate in an effective way, then you start to create problems. Because if you do not bring your ideas to the table and say, hey, this is why I do what I do, and these are the reasons. So why do you do your own things this X, Y, and Z way? Then we cannot carry that effective communication to learn from each other's values and beliefs. So communication is a big thing. You even said earlier about people navigating to people that they like or they look alike or do things the same way. But what we often do not ask is, what is the value in me being in this group? What is the value that I bring into this group? It is not always about the problem. Bring your own ideas about the solution. And then we can communicate by listening to each other and doing what we need to do to understand each other. When we talk about communication in terms of cross-cultural communication, there's verbal and there's nonverbal, and different cultures communicate differently. So my nonverbal communication might mean something to you, and I'm going to use an example. Simple one is the eye contact. In some cultures, and in my culture in particular, if you're not maintaining eye contact talking to an adult, that is considered respect. You're showing respect for that elderly person, as opposed to someone in the culture we live in now in the United States. You do have to maintain that eye contact. So we have to understand that because I'm not maintaining eye contact with you, it's not that I have low self-esteem or low self-confidence. But if you do not communicate that to your partner who comes from a different culture, they're not going to know to respect that. They will have their preconceived notion of you that you don't even know. So it is very important to understand who you're dealing with and what some of the values are in all areas of life.
And if you are looking for an African wife to marry, I'm talking about non-Africans. If you're looking for an African wife, especially a Cameroonian woman, you better not sit in front of those women, of the woman's parents, and cross your leg. It can be seen as very offensive. Eunice, I don't imagine you sitting in front of your dad and crossing your leg, would you?
Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. Not at all.
Very good. Very good. Now, and I'd like our audience to tell us, what are some of the misconceptions that people have about their cultures, or that you also have about other people? Because it's just not other people having about us. What are some of the misconceptions we have about other people? That's very important. I began the show by saying, in the United States, it's okay for a lot of people to go to bed and share the same bed with their dogs, or even kiss their dogs. That in Africa is an abomination. Now, if you go to China, to a Chinese restaurant in Beijing, if you're not careful, you will eat a well-prepared bowl of cat meat. Cat meat. In France, it would be probably dog meat or frog. In some parts of Africa and Cameroon, there are people who eat dog meat. So the question is, just because somebody eats what you don't eat, should that be a source of conflict? Should we judge people because of our using our cultural values as metrics? And the question goes to you. And before I ask you that question, Dr. G, why are you so passionate about this? I see you talk about this with so much fire in your belly. What's powering you up?
Well, you know that I have, they say you should talk the talk, but walk the walk. I have definitely had my own share of experiences with me having an accent, being a woman of, an immigrant and all whatnot. I have had experiences in my life that have caused me to become passionate. I will tell you, at the age of 21, I flunked out of the French-speaking University of Yaoundé. As a result of that, you can only imagine how devastated I was. I did not fail because I was not intelligent. I failed because I refused to learn the French language, knowing from the age of 12 that I had to know it to be successful. But I didn't see that as my problem. I saw that as someone else's problem. So that alone was a wake-up call for me in terms of being culturally aware and embracing other cultures and other languages. As a result of me failing, my parents would give me a second chance in life, and I had to be sent to Canada to study dental therapy, which I did amazingly well and obtain a job. But guess what? I failed to embrace the people and the culture, and I resulted in loneliness and anger, and had to move to the United States, thinking that when I moved to the US, I will find people that look like me, talk like me, and did things like me. But when I arrived in Washington, D.C., it was not different. I truly was not looking for people that look like me or talk like me. What I was looking for were people, place to call home. So I would make my home in Delaware. But soon after that transformation, what happened was I would be met with a stranger. I'm just carrying a regular conversation about a job opportunity. And I was told that I should not even give it a try because of my race, of my color, my ethnicity, being an immigrant and a woman. These were determinants to a job opportunity. But these are not just my experiences. They are our experiences and our story. So I am very passionate about cultural awareness. Having conversations is the only way out of this, which is why I'm so passionate talking to audiences in the workplace and around the world about cultural awareness and diversity and how we can use that to improve team performances. So that is why, because it's my experiences, I have walked the walk, I've been on the other side of the aisle, and I understand when somebody has a preconceived notion about you. Now, what if I had listened to that young lady and not go for a job that I wanted? I would not be talking to you today. I never embraced the languages in the first university I went to, but I took it upon myself to find out why this young lady was telling me not to go to this institution. I didn't have the same experiences she might have had. So that goes to show you that someone else's notion or preconceived ideas should not stop you from doing what you have to do. I owed it to myself to find out if that was indeed true. I had heard of racism. I have never lived through it, but I had to find out for myself if this was truly the world we're living in. And I have to tell you that no, it was not, because I did not go in with a chip on my shoulder. I did not go in with my adrenaline because somebody had said this institution was what it was. I owed them that to prove to me that they were not what I had learned. And thank God I did not do that, because in the long run, they would pay for my education, a first degree, 2 master's degrees, and now I have that, and eventually a PhD. So preconceived notions are only people's ideas, and assumptions can make or kill an opportunity. So that is why I'm passionate about it.
This is ChatNet Africa Live, and my guest this evening is Dr. G. She's popularly called, or fondly called, Dr. G, Dr. Eunice Gwan-Messier. I'm going to take the devil's advocate, like they say. Do you think that people who just don't believe in diversity is all wrong? I'll give you an example. Now, a Bali person gets married to a Bali woman. Isn't life a lot easier for them?
Not necessarily.
How so?
Just because you come from the same culture or the same tribe or the same social group doesn't make you necessarily get along. It all boils down to recognizing the differences even in your relationship. I'm going to use communication again because that is key. Because we communicate differently across cultures, right? So if I come from a culture where maybe the man is more the dominant factor, then the woman is seen as just a housewife. That can itself create conflict because woman emancipation, you see what's happening to women right now. Some cultures cannot handle that because in their culture, they believe the man is the decision maker. So if you come to a culture or intermarry within tribes and cultures, and of a sudden, the man who sees himself from his culture and his roots and foundation, brought up knowing that only him can make that decision, creates conflict in itself. I'm going to take, for example, in healthcare, there's so many cultures that people come to the hospital, and before the woman can make that decision, there has to be delegation to either the man or the elder in the community. So it just depends on what culture and which culture we're talking about in terms of how the male and female is related to in terms of decision making within those from that perspective.
Coming up this week or next week, we'll be having Dr. Alain Lekubo. He is a neurologist, also specialized in matters of epilepsy, stroke, spinal cord, and many other brain issues. If there are subjects you'd like Dr. Alain Lekubo to discuss, please let me know. You can contact me via Messenger. You can reach me via WhatsApp. A lot of you have my phone numbers because we come with matters that matter, matters that are relevant to you. Again, let me say this. If you know somebody who's making a difference, somebody who is touching lives, ordinary people with extraordinary stories, let us know, let me know. These are the kinds of people I want to take on Chat Night Africa Live. I also want to thank Dr. Njoin Anyangwe Ngute for the fantastic broadcast that she did with me last Sunday, or last week before last or so, alongside Eric Faye, one of the best musicians in the area here, metropolitan area. I just owe you so much. Thank you, Dr. Dita, all of you, Dr. Nukuna Adeline, and just so many of you. Dr. G, what do you think that, I'll give you an example. Bali people have their cultural union association, Bansors have theirs, this have theirs, the Caribbeans have theirs, Liberians have theirs. Like the message, your message of diversity doesn't seem to be working.
Well, that's an interesting question. You know, I think that this boils down to, again, the ethnocentrism and the ethnic division that somehow exists. We identify with people with whom we are familiar with whom we look alike and think alike. And again, without realizing what is the value. I'm not saying there's no value in these groups, but it just shows that even from the origin of ethnicity, we are divided. We tend to cling to our cultural groups because of ethnocentrism and stereotypes. I happen to not be from Bali, but I'm married to a Bali man. So somebody might say, okay, how did this even happen? Somebody from Nso married to a Bali person. And, you know, maybe the Bali person might think, or other Bali people might say, well, why are our men cross-marrying in other cultures? That should be.
I can tell you your husband saw something in you. I can tell you that because I know you personally, but go on.
You know,
sorry.
So those are some of the things that I begin to wonder, where are we heading to in terms of globalization, in terms of unity and diversity? Diversity is just you're black, I'm white, you're from Bali, I'm from so. The root of it is cultural awareness. So it doesn't matter if we have these different groups, but can we still come together as a united group and still deal with one another without having conflict? I'll give you an example. Calling my husband by his first name in front of his ethnic group, like maybe his gathering of his people, I will be reprimanded for doing that. But if I'm speaking to him...
I'm sure your friend Natalia will be like, excuse me?
Exactly. So it is all those little cultural differences, as opposed to somebody from where I originally come from. Just calling somebody by their first name doesn't mean anything. But it's more valuable to a Bali person that you attach that ni and ma in front of their name. It is considered disrespectful when you don't do that. You know, so it is all these little things that we all have to understand. So I say that to say diversity is just very plain. You're male, I'm female, you're lesbian, I'm gay. But when it comes to it, cultural awareness is the respect. It's the hardcore, what we should do. What are those differences? Am I willing to respect those people that I work with, those people that I go to church with, those people that I do business with? If you left here today, I'm going to give an example. If you were talking to an Asian person, they value relationships before the task that they have to complete. When you compare that to somebody from Europe, they are more focused on, you know, doing the task at hand and along the way building those relationships. So is either one of them necessarily wrong? No. It is just how they approach. It doesn't mean they do not value relationships. It is just a matter of prioritization. And when within that task that they realize they build the relationships. So it is just as simple as that.
Well, just to tell Dr. G, I have some strikingly beautiful daughters. And I keep saying that if you're a Caucasian and you want to come and marry my daughter, the first thing you don't want to do is, in front of me, cross your leg. That's unacceptable.
Yeah.
That's unacceptable.
Yes.
Now, but the question is just because it's not acceptable to you for that to happen, how should that person react to that kind of new environment? In other words, how do you react in an environment that is unlike yours, unlike what we are used to? I tell you again, if you go to Southern Africa or to Northern Cameroon, and I think Northern Nigeria to a certain degree, you find women dancing with their breasts all out, no breast wear. How do you, with that kind of cultural shock, tell me exactly, coach somebody, you're a coach. How should people react to that kind of cultural shock?
It's unlike everything else, coming to a new environment or doing something for the first time. I tell people, you have to be the listener. You have to watch and learn. You can't just jump into it assuming that you're bringing something to the table. And I'm going to say, if you're going to let's talk about the marriage we're talking about. If you're going to go marry somebody that has different cultural practices from yours, you're not just going to jump in and impose yours. You bring your own ideas, they bring their ideas, and you come to a common ground, what you're going to accept and what you're not going to accept. But it goes back to communication and being an active listener. If that's your first time in that environment, you got to listen, learn, then make your decisions before you make some choices and talk about it.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. that we're celebrating in a few hours in the United States said, you don't judge somebody by the color of their skin,
Absolutely.
but by the content of their character.
Absolutely.
What's your comment on that? Because that's one of the most beautiful statements I've ever had to read about.
Absolutely.
Or to study.
Absolutely.
What's your comment on that, Dr. G?
I agree with you. It is not how somebody look, how they talk. It is what content they have and what value they bring to the table. So avoid the assumptions, the stereotypical statements, and just deal with what that person, the value the person brings to the table. As simple as that. You know, we talk about languages, nonverbal. I'm going to give something to your audience to laugh about. When I first came to the United States, you know, back home in Cameroon, we call a cat a pussycat. And I kept calling pussycat, pussycat, and people are cracking out laughing.
So you're crazy.
And I didn't know what they were laughing about. And I'm like, hold on, what is wrong with what I just said? That is what we call it. But I was educated that when you say that, it's misconceived as it's conceived as something else in the United States. So I had to learn the hard way. But I didn't know. But it didn't bother me. I just said, hey, this where I come from, that's what we call it. So today I cannot repeat that same mistake. So I learned, and moving forward, I don't call it anymore. So just wanted to give your audience something to laugh about.
And that's great, because that's reality. If you have somebody coming from Africa, we have a different name in Africa for cat. And if you brought that name here, you look crazy. Somebody's asking, did you smoke weed? Now, Dr. G, I introduced you as an author. You are a motivational speaker. What books have you written? And what did you want to achieve by writing those books or that book?
Well, my book is titled Cultural Awareness, a Strategy That Can Influence Your Journey to Success. I have said this on your show before. My book was really, the intent of my book was to have something down, because I learned from some of my mentors that some of us go to our resting places with all this knowledge that we could share and help others. And when I started thinking about my journey, I felt it was necessary to put this in writing so that tomorrow or today it will inspire someone, give somebody the tips that I didn't have when I was going through my challenges in life. So that's why I wrote the book. So it's really a tool to help to inspire others who are struggling, to remind them that because you're having problems today, your tomorrow it's not necessarily what happened to you yesterday. Because going forward, hopefully, you have carried those lessons that you learned from those mistakes or challenges and move them ahead to better yourself, because you want to be somebody tomorrow. And who that person you want to become, you need those tools to help get to that level. So it's simply a motivational tool, some tips to help get through those challenges and just live life to the fullest, to your full potential.
Let me say this again. If you like what you are hearing, share this video. The entire planet needs to hear this beautiful message that's coming from Dr. G, connecting from the great state of Delaware. You are watching Chat Night Africa with your host, Divine Shamakom. That's my name. And my guest tonight, that beautiful Bansa woman, Dr. Gwen Messier. Cultural awareness as a building block for success. Illustrate.
Cultural awareness. We talked earlier about cultural identity. Who are you? Who do you want to become? What are your circumstances? What challenges have you had? And what lessons have you learned from those challenges? So basically, your identity, you start to define with people who you want to be. I'm going to go back to the classroom because I'm an educator. If I'm teaching you and you're not understanding what I'm teaching you, and you have something about your culture that will impact your learning in my environment, and I'm trying to include you, you have to tell me what is it that you're doing. So therefore, knowing who you are and being able to speak about you comfortably with a lot of confidence and say, hey, I'm not getting this. Maybe this will help me. Those are the type of successes I'm talking about. Being at the right place at the right time, being within the group that will help to uplift you and not pull you down. Somebody that you can cry on your shoulders, somebody that will advise you when they mean well and not just trying to pull you down. So your cultural awareness definitely defines your success if you use it right.
How can diversity, or how likely is diversity going to or to become a problem?
Can you repeat the question again, please?
How likely could diversity become a problem?
Diversity can become a very big problem for many of the reasons we've already talked about. Just the fact that we don't acknowledge those in our environment and the differences. I often say that my cultural identity is a hidden treasure because there's so much potential that you were born with, and until you bring it out, nobody's going to know that you have those values that can impact somebody else's life, or even your employment, the performance, the outcome on your job. Those values, when you put them together, you people can start bringing up more creative solutions to the table, and your company can be positioned to have a global impact, global change. We talked about globalization earlier. So these things are not just, we just want to talk about diversity. What do we want to do about it? How can we celebrate each other? How can we celebrate those ideas? Until we start to do that, then diversity is just diversity and we're not doing anything about it. That's why I made the point that cultural awareness is deeper, more enrooted than diversity. Diversity is just, you're black, I'm white, you're a woman, I'm a man. But then when we go into cultural awareness and cultural competency, we're walking that journey to start recognizing the value in differences. But until we become sensitive, then that creates conflict because we're misunderstanding have misconceptions about each other.
Being sensitive, and that's a key word in what you just said, could that also be, or could that amount to walking on eggshell around people?
Absolutely. You brought an idea about
Not,
food.
would it be political correctness?
Not necessarily so. You brought an example.
Okay.
You brought an example of people not liking others' food. One thing I had to struggle with is when people smell my food. I never liked that. I felt offended because the food was different. I'm eating at work and people will pick up your food and smell it because it smells different and it looks different. I will never take somebody's food and just smell it. But that is a habit within the culture we live in. And am I to fault them? Absolutely not. That's how they grew up. They don't know the things that they don't know. So it is my responsibility to educate that individual based on what we're talking about. I'll give you another example. While working in the intensive care unit, I had a friend whom I've built a lasting relationship with now, who would often was an older African American, and she would often roll her eyes while talking to me and ask me, where are you from again? From across the waters? How did you get over here? And at some point, I literally had to pull her by her uniform. I said, we're going to have a talk. Let's go into the break room and have a conversation. Honestly, I am so glad I did that because it opened up an opportunity for us to talk. And in the process of the conversation, she did not even realize she was doing that. She did not realize that it was condescending. I had to remind her about my culture and how I perceived the what with that extra A, because it was offensive in my culture. And you're doing that repeatedly. You're behaving in a condescending manner. But through our conversation, I realized she did not know. She got the opportunity to learn about my culture. And I realized that she was just being herself and she didn't know any better. But had I not seized that teaching opportunity, which we often miss in life, we just get angry and not talk about what is it that I would expect from my partner or coworker, and we get angry and move along. But because I seized that opportunity to learn something that then become a unit issue, or a solution, I should say, because nobody ever did that to me again. And I was positioned such that nobody repeated such behavior. But had I not done that, it would not have been beneficial. So it benefited not only her and I, but it benefited our unit. And we became more cohesive and we worked as a team and not divided any longer.
You listening to this broadcast, are you from Nigeria? Are you from Liberia? Are you from Angola? Are you from Rwanda? Are you from Russia? Wherever. We'd like to hear about where you are originally from, because it's in understanding ourselves that we begin to better relate with other people and get out of those little rooms, boxes, cleavages that we have kind of locked ourselves into. That's very important. Interactivity. So I like to get people from all other nations around the world to come on Chat Night Africa so we can chat, we can understand each other. Maybe when next I'm traveling to Bali, you ask for a dress like this or a hat like this. Who knows? Now, Dr. G, you are a very accomplished woman that nobody can take away from you. At the start of each year, people make resolutions. What are some of the resolutions that you made and you never followed through on? Well, and what happened?
Well, I'm sure I have made some and I haven't followed through on. Everybody wants to lose weight. It's simple as that. At the beginning of the year, we all get on this tangent about New Year resolutions and New Year resolutions. But this is my advice. Whatever your resolution was this year or whatever goal you set for yourself, there is one key. You have to be intentional. And being intentional means you have to know where you're going. You have to understand your journey. What are those baby steps that you need to get to where you're going? It is not just writing a goal and putting it somewhere in on your bookshelf. It is writing those goals or setting those plans and having them where you can visualize them, where it's visible. You can remind yourself, hey, I said I was going to do this by February or by March. Maybe I'm falling behind. What are the reasons why you're falling behind? Is it something, some challenges you're going through that you can make changes? Is it something that you maybe just need to delegate some tasks and get back on track? It is whatever you want to do. But the key is being intentional, making sure that you write them down. Make it your mission statement. A mission statement is not just for organizations. You can have your personal mission statement. You can have your personal strategic plan. Where are you going? How are you going to accomplish that? All of it has to be written. If you come into my bathroom, I have my goals. You have to see it. But then you have to do mental visualization. You have to believe and have faith. Jim Rohn says, what the mind of man can conceive and believe, it shall achieve it. So when you do those goals, it's not all under your control. If I may say, sometimes you got to let God take control. But you do the work and he'll direct you. But you have to see it. You have to make it a reality. You have to believe and have faith. You know,
why do you think that some people don't make goals?
I believe people make goals, but they just don't take it serious. Challenges sometimes get in the way. You know, life is in such a way that you may make plans. I will tell you, I never set on my journey to become a nurse. I told you I flunked out of the university. When I was growing up, I always wanted to be a teacher just like my father. But life would have other plans for me because I failed. I ended up becoming a dental therapist and then ended up doing nursing, which, however, is the best decision I have ever made in my lifetime. But I have also learned a lot of lessons along the way. So people do
Dr.
set
G,
goals
what
happen.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
And I was just saying, people do set goals and challenges, whether because they cannot withstand the challenges and they give up. Because if you don't have a winner's mindset, I can guarantee you, life is tough. It will throw storms at you. You will meet roadblocks until you keep on wearing that winner's hat. You're not going to get anywhere.
Dr. G, each time I chat with you, you are so eager to talk about where you failed in life. This is not something people want to talk about. Why do you do this?
Because that's why I am who I am today. Because your failures can become your strength if you have the right mindset. Your failure doesn't mean that's going to be the rest of your life. There were lessons that you learned from that failure that you have to now take and continue building on it. You know, they often say success is what? Massive action. So you have to keep working at it. Whatever you have to do to rebuild what you had lost, to rebuild yourself from failing, that failure ultimately can transcend into your strength and who you will become in the long run. So do not dwell on the failures and don't sweat the small stuff. Just keep working at what you're doing. Yes, you're going to have naysayers. You're going to have people who will discourage you, who will say, why are you doing this? That's not what the public is doing. You cannot keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. That is insanity. You have to change. What is it that you're doing now that it's not working? Are you hanging around the wrong group of people? Are you hanging around people who are just sucking energy out of you and not uplifting you, to up-level you, to take you to the next level of your career, of your family life, of where have you? Because people will turn to put words into your mind. And as long as you leave your brain open and allow them keys to your brain, you're heading to the wrong direction.
Dr. G, I must tell you that sometimes life throw punches, pam, 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 pam. How do you have some punches in life, some of which I know. I mean, where do you draw the strength from? Just release that secret. That life punches you so hard in the face, and life does punch people, and a lot of people. A lot of people fall and don't get up. How did you fall and get up? What's the secret, Dr. G?
Well, this is my belief, okay? You're going to fall regardless. Life is going to get at you. You have to make that determination. It begins with your faith. How much do you believe in yourself? Steve Harvey often says you have to stay on Faith Street. If you don't stay on Faith Street, that package is going to come and bypass you. Because if you do not maintain your faith, you will easily fall. Having that strength, and I tell people, what is that thing that you can fall back to? What is your why, your purpose that you can fall back to? Is your purpose because of your children? Is it because of your mother, your parents, your spouse? What have you? Whatever thing that gets you out of your bed on a daily basis and go, whether you want to go or not. And you do whatever you have to do, whether people are looking at you or not. It's that purpose. Because that's the reason you exist. And it's that purpose that will help you go through those challenges. But you have to be patient, because patience, what you want is not going to come overnight. Yes, there will be challenges. So you have to exercise patience. And God will give you that thing that you want at the opportune time and at the time that He had already pre-planned for you.
Dr. G, some people fear to venture out. Don't they have a reason to fear? They turn around and they see people who tried, dead, and failed. Isn't fear sometimes a legitimate feeling?
Fear is false evidence appearing real.
How so?
If you're not afraid in life, then you're not human. But being afraid and staying afraid is the problem. You have got to get yourself out of that fear mode. How can you become successful if you continuously are afraid because of something somebody has told you or because you've seen somebody fail? What is it that you can do different? Follow those who have been successful. Follow their path. Read on them. Read on people that have become successful and how they became successful. Practice their strategies. Why would you dwell on those who have failed? The person who has failed and accepted failure is a loser. And that's all they know. So what are you going to benefit from them? That's why I said earlier, you have to see the value in the relationship. What value is this friend bringing to me? Are they just telling me something they want me to feel sad about and stop me from fetching my goals?
Dr. G, people like you, PhD, very accomplished women, tend to be very arrogant. What makes you so humble? So humble?
Well, the degrees and the credentials to me are just credentials. I have all the credentials, but you know, the degree that I'm most proud about is my 2 miraculous children, if anybody asks me. So the degrees are just a way of getting me to where I wanted to be in terms of a career, in terms of an education. But what I value the most is my 2 most beautiful children that God blessed me with. So maybe that's why I stay humble. I don't know.
where can somebody, I see Dr. Eric Tangumunkem giving you a thumbs up. Thank you, Doc. Thank you, Dr. Dieter. You have, I mean, you guys, I knock at your door any time of the night and you're willing, you are able to come on Chat Night Africa Live. I appreciate you, and many people appreciate you. You people who come on this show are changing lives. Dr. G, you have no idea whose lives you are turning around this evening through what you are saying. I thank you so much. How can somebody get your book?
You can get my book on my website. My website is www.eunicegwanmesia.net. EUNICEGWANMESIA.net. Or you can also get it on Amazon.
And your last word before we go.
Well, I'd like to recognize some of the guests I saw signing in. Some of them are all the way from Canada. My classmates from National School of Dental Therapy, Jackie and Connie and all of them. Thank you guys for your continued support. And I see Nelly, thank you. She said she enjoyed the discussion. And I saw my coach and mentor, Renee Smith. Thank you, girl, you rock. And I just wanted to give out that shout out to everyone that has been watching tonight. What I do have to leave you with is this: be who you are. Know your cultural identity and celebrate your heritage. Do not allow anyone tell you because you have an accent, because you look different, that you're less important or you only deserve a certain type of a job. No, go in with self-confidence and your self-esteem and make things happen for you. My father always tells us that if you want change, that change must begin with you. And if you want a solution to a problem, put yourself in front of the mirror, and the solution to that problem begins with you. So I'm going to challenge all of us to really know who we are. Thank you, Manajela, for putting that website up. Really knowing who we are and celebrate each other. We live in such a condescending world right now. The rhetoric that is going around from our leaders is something that we really need to lock arms more so now than before, because the world is divided. But it will only take us as human beings to love one another, to recognize each other's values, to make a difference. If we want to make global impact, we must unite. If we want to touch lives, we have to come together. We cannot continue the separation, because in our cultural differences, there is value. In our cultural differences, there's something we can learn from each other. We're not only impacting each other, but we're impacting the world. Look at how many women right now are sitting in Congress. I'd like to quote Congresswoman Ian Omar from Somali American from Minnesota. She came into this country 23 years ago. Did she have a goal or what? She probably had a dream. Maybe she, at the point of her entry, she did not dream this big. But who knows what challenges she has been through. She never gave up. She probably was told, you have an accent. You look like a Muslim. Maybe you only belong in Walmart, because that is just how. I, as a nurse, have been told several times when I walk into a patient's room, hey, are you my nursing assistant? When in fact, you see me wearing the nursing uniform and it has iron on my badge. But you think that because I'm Black and I have an accent, I can only be a nursing assistant. But mind you, I'm not downgrading nursing assistants, because I started my career as a nursing assistant. And they're a very key and important member of the healthcare team, because without them, nurses cannot do what they do on a daily basis. So I do celebrate my nurses assistants. And for one, I personally trained 230 of them through Always Care Health Services that I used to own. So I know the value. So what I say this to say is not to impress anyone, but to impress on all of us that we can do it. You just have to be intentional. You don't have to apologize to anybody. You have to set your goals, but keep working. Action. Action is the key. When you fall behind, pick yourself back up. There are mentors who are ready to help you. Do not be by yourself to a point where you get depressed. Talk to people. Seek advice. There's never a stupid question. Ask questions, and somebody is out there who will help you, who will uplift you and motivate you to move to the next level of your life.
Dr. G, I can listen to you till tomorrow morning. You are one amazing, disarmingly humble, loving, wonderful woman, always willing to share what you know. This platform has space for you anytime you request it. That's a promise. And if you have something to share, if you think that you have something to share, let me know. You can contact me via Messenger, via WhatsApp. Some of you have my phone numbers. I want you on this platform. Let us be world changers through how we think.
Absolutely.
Because it all begins here. You cannot rise above your thinking. Can you, Dr. Gwanwisia?
Absolutely not. You know, we have to be all voices, one person at a time, if we want to change the world. We have to create our workplaces where we engage with each other, where there's job satisfaction, where we're changing customer service, because we recognize the differences and celebrate it. When we do that, we're going to have a global impact. But it all starts with each and every one of us. Let everyone be a voice in your own special way. Be a voice, whatever you desire to be, let it be. But we all need these values and beliefs and our cultural differences to put together to impact wherever we are, whether it's our churches, our lay communities, our workplaces, but we need to improve performance. And the only way to improve those performances and have these companies have a global impact is to recognize cultural awareness, the power of diversity and inclusion. Bring everybody to the table. Do not be dividers. And that goes for leaders. We should provide the resources for our organizations, for our employees, to really have culturally sensitive and comfortable communication. And with that, we truly will change the world.
And this show has been sponsored by Bold and Elegance. If you have a husband, you can get the shoes. Go online, go to Facebook, Bold and Elegance, one word. I got some of these shoes, Dr. G. Each time I wear these shoes and go to occasions, one day I didn't know that I was so disruptive of the church service. Everybody was looking at my feet. They love the shoes. That's genuine leather, handcrafted Italian leather, and you can get that. Bold and Elegance, my sponsors. They are on Facebook. Just search Bold and Elegance. It's on that note, ladies and gentlemen, that we round off this edition of Chat Night Africa. We will be back next week with an exceptionally smart medical doctor, Dr. Alain Lekubo. Chat Night Africa now closing.
We're gonna boogie, boogie, woogie, and And when we jam,
That's Night Africa. We come to
outside,
motivate, inspire.
it's all right
We
here.
come to immunize you.
It's
We
dynamite.
come to weaponize you with
I'm
information.
ready.
Yes, when you don't get it, you don't get it. Why should you miss it? Listen to what Dr. G just told you. Share the video. If you're our friend, if you're my friend, let this message go viral
Go get down.
and hit all the four
Go
corners
dance.
of the planet,
Go
because
dance.
I will be coming back
Go
again
dance.
for yet another edition.
I'm coming.
I'm coming back
Coming
again.
to get down. We're gonna dance.
Production directors Emmanuel YD and John Santo
I'm ready.
Fire, live from
I'm coming.
Manendo.
I'm dancing. I'm dancing. We're gonna
Contributions
dance.
Dr. Ivo
Go
Dina,
dance.
Dr. Alain de Kubu,
We're gonna party.
Dr. Eric
Party.
Tambobotem, Dr. Nicola Adeline, of course, Linda Harry.
We're gonna dance. Side to side.
Thank you,
It's
Pastor
all right
Praise,
here.
for coming
It's
on the show
dynamite.
to answer some tough questions
I'm
about
ready.
Christianity.
I'm coming.
I'm coming back again
I'm ready.
for yet another
I'm ready to
exhilarating
get down.
show. Your host,
I'm
my
ready.
name, Divine Chamuko.
I'm
I
coming.
love you and see you again
I'm dancing.
very, very soon. Bye-bye, Dr. G. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
I'm
Good
ready.
night, everyone.